How did that get you so hard? I don't understand.
It was like how enthusiastic you were about being friends. You were like, yes.
Who doesn't want more friends? Everyone wants friends.
I know.
Hello and welcome to Talking Too Loud with Chris Savage. I'm your host, Chris Savage. I am joined by our podcast producer extraordinaire. She loves to run outside because she's committed to a half marathon.
It's true.
Is that right?
It's true. That's why
She's
I'm
a
red.
Brooklynite.
I am.
Yep. And you're here.
We're a little bit of a mess today, but our guest sure isn't.
No.
The opposite.
So our guest today, Brittania Boey, who is also we call B during the episode, who is the chief commercial officer at Harry's and has helped them expand their products dramatically, scale. Is such a fun conversation to have with B.
So fun. She's a powerhouse. I'm excited. She's also a health advocate, which listeners, you'll hear as we get into the interview, but that's relevant to old Savage here, young old Savage.
You know, we all need health advocates at different points in time. And yes, I was, what do they say? I was felled by COVID.
That's what you've been.
That's the expression.
Yeah, felled.
Yeah, felled.
You could just
I
say
was felled by.
You've been talking too loud about it because that is what you've been talking too loud about.
Yes. I unfortunately got COVID, as did my whole family. It was fortunately very mild. But was a large, as always, bummer. But I will tell you, throw a little immunity on top of that boosted base, and you better believe I went a little too crazy, I think, on Saturday.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, should we go out for breakfast? Yep. Should we go out for lunch? Yep. Should we go out for dinner? Yep. Should I go to a tea house and see an experimental music concert? Yes. Should I then go to a large indie pop concert indoors at 10 p.m.? Yes. I just did absolutely everything you could possibly do in a day. And I came home at 11 p.m. and I was like, I didn't have to do all that. That was just I did that because I couldn't do it before. And I'm tired.
Yeah.
I don't need to do this. You
didn't need to cram it all. But you know what? I respect your appetite for life. That's what I'll say.
Thank you. Yes.
It's a big one.
It was funny, seeing some friends the next day. They're like, what did you do yesterday? I just listed it off. They're like, what is wrong with you? I was like, I don't know. I had to because I could.
You were cooped up.
Yeah. Well, it was a delight to do all those things too. And you know what else is a delight is talking to B. So I think we got to get into this episode.
We got to get in there. Let's do it.
Okay. Hard cut to episode now. B, so nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Nice to meet you both.
How's your week going?
Well, it's only Monday, so I think Monday is good so far. It's pretty warm here. So I would say a great start.
And where are you?
I'm in New York. I'm in Manhattan. I've been here
Awesome.
for this whole pandemic too. I haven't really
moved from your apartment?
Yeah. I did move apartments and take advantage of the falling rental rates in the first year, but other than that, I haven't moved.
Awesome. Well, we're super excited that you're here. And as you know, the show is called Talking Too Loud because when I get excited, my trait is I cannot control the volume of my voice. I've been told that since I was a child. It happens absolutely constantly. But one of the things we like to do on the show is actually start with you. What's got you talking too loud? What's got you excited?
Yeah, I think the thing I'm most excited about now is health and being a health advocate, I would say, probably on two dimensions. One, for sure, for better, for worse, in the last couple of years, I'd have an enormous amount of CT scans, probably way more radiation than my body needs in a 40-year period or whatever it is. And I have found that through all of these situations, if you are not so on top of the system, the diagnosis, the steps, I remember being wheeled into the ER. I'm like, wait a minute. You gave me the wrong contrast. I'm not a medical professional, but just being able to catch these things and sort of really speaking up for. I'm one of those nerds that reads the drug contraindications, that fold out, that's a really long piece of paper. And I'll bring it back to the pharmacist and be like, these two drugs, contraindications, should have been flagged. So a little bit of maybe the medical profession's worst nightmare. So that definitely has me talking too loud. In addition to the I have so many friends and acquaintances, people that I work with who are suffering from something, whether it's mentally, physically, some sort of ailment and pain, and it's like annoying them, bugging them, paining them on a daily basis, and they don't do anything about it. It's sort of just like acceptance that I'm going to wake up with my back feeling tight, or I'm going to wake up not feeling so great, or whatever it is. And I'm just a big proponent of, like we don't have to accept that. And, there are things that you can do. And that obviously I'm aware it comes from a position of privilege to be able to do things. But I think for sure, especially in the last, year or so, that has been the thing that I am talking too loud about.
So are you, obviously only answer what you want to answer here, but did you basically something happened in your life and then you realize hey, I should be in more control of my health and drive forward?
I think I've always been interested in the concept of health and balance there. My family practices Chinese medicine, obviously grew up seeing Western doctors, and I always found their approaches to be so polar ends of the spectrum. One being way more sort of proactive and balancing in the end, one being, really great for reactive problems that need to be solved in the moment. And I found living in both worlds that there is kind of a middle ground to it. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. I think in another life, I should have been in a medical profession or something like that, because I love reading science journals. I love reading getting to the details and trying to educate myself on this. One funny story, maybe not funny, but I was going to the doctor for 2 weeks straight, and my stomach is on fire, my whole abdomen, I can't sleep. And they just kept telling me I needed to take antacids. I had acid reflux. So I was.
Me too. I had the same exact thing. Sorry.
And I'm I refuse to believe that sitting up and eating 60 pounds of Tums every day is the actual answer.
Yeah.
So finally, I got a physician assistant to write a script for me to go get an ultrasound, MRI, CAT scan, blah, 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 all that stuff. Turns out I had 2 weeks worth of appendicitis. They're wheeling me out of the ER. I'm not super conscious. My doctor's okay, we're going to go, surgery, got to take this thing out. And I was no, I don't remember where, but I recall reading a science journal that they're testing a new way of treating appendicitis in Europe. And I want that new version. I want antibiotics. I'm sort of
whoa.
Prevent surgery unless you're related to it. And I have no idea when I read that, where that piece of information came and how it popped into my mind in that moment of pain. But I treated it differently. And my doctor later on told me that, he was using this as a case study for what to do with patients that have really different approaches to really well-known things like appendicitis and take it out. So I still have my appendix today.
Wow.
For better or for worse. But that's just an example of my health nerdness.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Mine ended really differently. I had H. pylori, a bacterial
but that's
infection.
Serious. That's
it was
serious.
Infection. It was. And so I got antibiotics, but they misdiagnosed it at the hospital. And if I had you on the case, then maybe that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Misdiagnosed. And then, I won't even get into all this stuff around drugs and therapies not really being tested on women, and the difference, we're not just smaller men, and there's difference in hormones and all this other stuff. But if you go down that rabbit hole, I could go forever. But that, I'm always loud about that stuff, I guess.
Wow. Well, you obviously have a calling here. And it seems like anytime any of us is going to the ER, we should call you. And
I know, Sylvie, just text me first as you're I feel these things. What is it?
Yeah. Okay. I have a long list.
You can quote the research paper and get an experimental treatment and fix all your problems. Well, that's exciting. That's awesome. And interesting. And I thought you might say that COVID is kind of what had you go deep on this. For me, I spent so much time researching stuff around COVID that I never thought I would. And I have a bunch of friends who will be now it's getting much more safer to do everything. Is it safe to do this? Is it not okay? Can I do this after I get the vaccine? I was well, it takes about 14 days for this first thing, but you have some antibodies the second time, blah, 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 blah.
It's just you're the phone a friend. You're the phone a friend with COVID.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah. So you probably got a bunch of calls when you're 10 days to 5 days. Is that mandate real? That change?
Exactly.
That was a big one.
Yes. Or I just had an exposure and my kid had an exposure, blah, blah, blah. Do I need to stop doing other things? Or it's all right, no, wait 4 days and then go get a PCR and then do a rapid test every day and like you're probably fine. Like, okay. Anyway, we don't need to go into that, but that is super interesting. So let's do a hard pivot. Let's do a hard pivot. So you're the chief commercial officer at Harry's. What is, for those people who don't know, what's a chief commercial officer? And also, for people who don't know, what's Harry's?
I'll start with Harry's. So Harry's it started as a men's grooming brand back in 2013, focusing on shave first, and has really grown into other categories on here. Launched on DTC, and then have rolled out into retail as well as internationally in the UK and Canada, and in Germany most recently. That's how the brand started. The Harry's, the company, has since launched other brands in its umbrella. So Flamingo was its first new brand. Cat Person, which a lot of people don't actually know is us, which is a cat food brand, launched a couple years later. Yeah.
I had no idea.
Not shaving cat food. You wouldn't think it's the same company, right? And then Headquarters, which is a women's hair care and scalp brand. So that's sort of like the ecosystem of the family of brands that we have at Harry's. And chief commercial officer. So, I've been with Harry's for a long time. I joined in like June of 2013, which means my job has like changed a ton over time. And so when we were trying to, kind of catch up with my title with the scope changes, we're like Googling titles. And I remember one of my founders saying, there's this title like chief commercial officer. What do you think? I literally had to Wikipedia what chief commercial officer was. And the Wikipedia post said, it's like some intersection of like marketing, product, innovation, sales. And I'm like, cool. I like it makes sense at the time in terms of like the breadth I was covering across the brand and innovation funnel. But that is my knowledge of what a chief commercial officer is.
And how big was the company when you joined?
It's probably like 15 or so people in a room. One room.
And how many people are there now?
Sort of New York and London office is about 600, and our factory in Germany is about 600.
Wow. So you've scaled a little bit, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. I think there's a lot I want to dig into here, but first, I mean, it's interesting because you're so transparent about that. Like, someone like, here's a title, let me just look this up, and this is on Wikipedia, and like, this sounds cool. But then also, like, I think it's often the case that we want to feel like our careers, you could have, this like perfect plan. And like, was there a perfect plan? Like, how'd you get from there to here? How does that work? Like when you go from like looking it up in Wikipedia and now, there's 600 people and massive organization, the company's scaled dramatically. I mean, most founders of a 15-person company wouldn't make it to this scale. So what has that journey been like?
It's been really fun. In some ways, the journey at Harry's has been a blink of an eye. I think that we have been very intentional about some things. I think we've been really intentional about the type of company we want to be, the values we want to have, the type of products and service and brands that we want to bring to our customers. Why do we exist? I think we have spent a lot of time about being intentional on those things. But with a lot of room, I would say, for flexibility, being able to react to the market. And I think that, in the shave industry, it's changed dramatically since Harry started. And I think that, being able to keep up with that is leaving a ton of room for flexibility and reactiveness. It gets harder and harder because, you can be reactive when you're 30 people in a room and let's change priorities over here. When you're 600 people, you can't just turn on a dime, and you have to figure out ways in which you can. So I think it's a mix of both, probably.
What do you think it was, when you joined, what do you think did you see the elements of the company and the brand that made it successful? Did you have a hunch when you were joining, like, oh, I think this could really work? Or was it more like, no, we're just going to create this from scratch?
I wasn't super sure. I think actually most of the time I spent was getting to know our founders, Jeff and Andy. Because at the end of the day, there's so much risk, there's so much unknown. It's really, do I want to be on this adventure with these people, riding the ups and downs? Funnily enough, at the exact same time that Jeff and Andy were talking to me about Harry's, the founder of another shaving company was also talking to me about the same thing. And so
wow.
in my mind, I'm like, all these like men's shavings brand, like what's up with men's shaving? Like first of all, I'm not a guy, I don't shave my face. Is this like movies, when everyone wants to make the same movie about Capote or something like that? Like is it trend based? You know how it is, right? Like
yeah.
And so
Dante's
I wasn't
Peak
sure.
and Inferno or whatever. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. And like as an Asian woman with not a lot of hair, I just found it a little bit peculiar that all of a sudden people were talking to me about shaving. And so I think I appreciated the perspective that they were bringing, the challenger mindset. Obviously, Jeff had started Warby Parker, which is was really interesting to me to learn about their stories and their approach. But I honestly spent most of the time just getting to know them and a few folks on the team at the time.
And what advice would you give to somebody who, from what you've seen, like you've been part of, something that has been wildly successful and has actually scaled and like lived up to its values. But what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to make that decision today? Like if they're joining a startup and they're trying to figure out, will this work or not? Should I bet my time on this? Should I bet my career on this? How would you increase the likelihood that they would make a good decision?
Yeah, I think the first one for me, what I've already talked a little bit about, which is really getting to know the founder or the founders. And I think really pressure testing that, getting to understand, speaking to more people that they already know, and not just people within the company or their investors, right? Those people are highly incentivized to sell you to join if that's what the offer you've been given, but really trying to understand like how they make decisions, especially the harder ones. The second one, I think, is just being really honest with yourself and what you're trying to get out of it. Right? I think it's really challenging if what you're looking for to join someone else's startup is like the giant payday. Not that you won't make money of it, but if, depending on your expectations, you might not just need to be the founder yourself, right? And so I think there's a little bit of that. And so what are you trying to get at? What vision are you supporting there? And then I think the third thing is a little bit of your role, but depending how early you start, it's going to change. It's going to change drastically. What you think it is, all of a sudden, either you will or will not be good at it, or the company will likely need something really different over time. So the third thing I think you have to hold really loosely to, I think for folks who are holding really tight to, I'm going to have this job and it's going to mean this 1, 2, 3 years from now, I think that's actually really hard for an early stage company. And those are probably the folks that I've talked to that I say, like, actually really let's question, startup may sound sexy, but do you actually want to do this? And, what are reasons or motivations behind it?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm thinking about a particular person in my life right now who is like at a early stage startup and they've done well, but there's some weird stuff happening and they're trying to decide, should I stick with this or not? And, it's just interesting to hear you say that you're really evaluating like the founders and their values, and especially I think in the hard times, because I think it can be hard to join something small when you feel like you're lucky to get the shot, but the truth is like also you're investing your time and energy and you're betting on them, right? So it's just like it's interesting because like you made that bet with your career and you got in there, it scaled massively, and then you also there's a lot of other stuff to talk about that you already, like things we can go deeper on that we already talked about, but like, even when you make a decision, like we want to expand into other brands, that is a huge decision, right? Yeah. Like that is enormous in terms of the amount of resources that go into this. And in your case, like manufacturing physical goods and people's livelihoods and like, will we raise the next round and stuff, all these things. Like it ultimately comes back to like values and communication and like how you work with those core people, right?
Yeah. That's exactly right. And I think it's going to be all of your daily moments where you'll see this decision making come to play and how they treat other people. And my sense is if you have even the littlest spidey sense that it's not right, or you're already in the company and you're saying things you don't like, or you don't it makes you feel uncomfortable inside, you probably know the answer. And that's hard though. It's hard to like trust your gut and leave, or trust your gut and be like, I'm going to pass this up and here's why. And also, the same startup or culture is not for everybody. So you got to find the one that fits you, and hopefully you're able to contribute to it and grow it as well.
Let's go back to you took the job men's shaving brand. What did you do when you got there? Like, were you like, oh, what is it like to like, were you finding, what happened with that?
Yeah. I shaved a lot of other guys' faces. Like,
I didn't really want to ask that, but for some reason
totally.
I started to do this.
You have to. First of all, I was like, okay, I got to do, I'm like if it wasn't obvious from my health advocacy stories, like I'm like a research kind of person. I want to know what I need to know and like gain an expertise. And, I'm not a engineer or a chemist or anything like that. Or, I don't even have like a industrial design background. And so everything I've been doing in the startup world has been just like reading, talking, learning from others, and like trial by fire, which is something I love. And so I think the first thing for me is I had to go buy a bunch of men's razors and just try them on people, because it's not the same. And surprisingly enough, sensorially, you can feel a difference, even if it's not on your face. You can feel where the blade, how it cuts on through the hair, if it's tugging or not, how rough it is, how many passes you can do. And then eventually I actually got trained on this. There's these sensory panels. They're actually really amazing. So shaving is one of those things where you can't measure like black and white. It's a 70%, it's an 80%, because it's so much touch and feel. So we have these human instruments, essentially, that you train. And they stand at these stations, and the water is the exact same temperature across. The amount of shaving cream dollop is the same as across, right? And you're training them to be like human instruments. So you say, like, you take a stroke and you write something down, and you kind of start to weed people out of your panel who aren't as sensitive as other people. And that way, if you make a tiny difference on the blade edge, for example, you'll be able to pick it up in this sort of human instrument panel. So I went and got trained.
Hold on. You're saying they're a human instrument. So you don't mean like they make a noise to like, when you're shaving properly. You mean...
Well, they write it down.
They write it down. Okay. I thought literally you were like, oh, okay. Like, you have people like singing in harmony. No? Okay. No, but you're saying people who are like highly, highly sensitive.
Highly sensitive. Yeah. And then they're trained over time to be even more sensitive as like a panel as a whole, which I find like so fascinating. Very interesting, right? Yeah. And so I took the same training on somebody else's face so that I could feel. And I'm like very proud of myself when it works. When my team hands me 2 prototypes, and it's prototype A and B, and they tell me like, oh, you tell us which one, and I'm able to pick it out. I'm like, yes, wow, like my human instrument training is working.
That's crazy. That's like, it's like you're a, what do you call it? Like a sommelier, but of shaving.
Yeah, of men's facial hair shaving sommelier. It's way sexier, by the way.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I guess that makes perfect sense that you would do that. And it also seems very thoughtful, and like also seems like an efficient way to make your product better. But it's like, these are the things you don't imagine. Yeah. I don't imagine this. You just imagine that there's like, blades coming off the line, and like, that's good enough. And like, that's very cool. I mean, we do all types of research here, but it's like people sitting in front of computers using an interface, right? And so you just track that. It's just, I guess this is the same version of that.
Yeah, it's definitely the same version of that. I had a lot to learn about the engineering space. The shaving technology and patent landscape is very robust. It's super interesting. I had no idea how complicated it was, and how much it was actually used as a competitive advantage of a strategy to be able to patent different ideas in this space, and how it leads to different manufacturing outcomes, and what's truly proprietary or not. And so I had a lot to learn, which was part of the fun.
And when you said that the industry has changed a lot, like what was it like in 2013, and what's happening now?
Yeah, there was one dominant player, Gillette, and Gillette is like a formidable competitor in this space. Multiple lines of product, different price points, slightly different nuances per product, addressing different customer segments, and one smaller player, which is Schick or Edgewell here in the U.S. at least. And that sort of market share picture is relatively true kind of throughout the world, especially in the more industrialized world. And that was it for a long time. And I think with the rise of a bunch of sort of digital online brands and shaving, first with Dollar Shave Club, then with us, and so on and so forth, what you've seen is a real change in the pricing dynamics there, I think, first. Second is the proliferation of brands that are coming into the space. I think before there was one brand, the core brand in Gillette, and having different lines. And then sort of as the customer has evolved over time, just thinking about, well, does this brand actually resonate with me? And what we really found was guys weren't resonating to the kind of Gillette, the best a man can get, like you got to be the top dog, you have to be Superman or Tom Brady or whoever it was on the advertising. And the design of the handle, we like to say looked a little bit like an outer space spacecraft with like all the bells and whistles to show your technology. And their technology, it is great. And so it wasn't resonating with the customers, and the price point definitely wasn't as well. So there was a real opportunity for us to come in, offer a product that was speaking to the customer, was meeting his needs, and also at, half the price. And that sort of combination, it's really hard to get all three things right. And not every industry has that opportunity at any given point in time, but there certainly was there. And now you see there's like a ton of different entrants. Gillette themselves have launched a bunch of other brands within their portfolio as well that have sort of rotated in and out, trying to kind of emulate and follow this like surge of new consumer brands that we've been seeing in a lot of categories, not just shaving.
And how has that changed how you think about competition? Because like you came in challenger brand versus Gillette, and now there's like much more. Is that something that you all think about? Do you watch really closely, or what's your approach there?
Yeah, I mean, we do watch it closely. It's really important for us to understand how everything is playing out. I still believe that Gillette is the main competitor. They have a dominant share still. They own a lot of technology, and it's still the person to focus on from a competitive view. But I think when we're thinking about our brands and products, it's less focused on the other brand competitor. It's more focused on where is this customer going. So as an example, we found that a lot of younger consumers, modern consumers that we were targeting, for example, he was actually more concerned about the comfort of his shave. Like if he does a lot of passes, how does it feel? Where some of the older generation consumers that were still using Gillette, he was more focused on the closeness, not wanting the 5 o'clock shadow, like really having a really tight shave so you're not seeing anything at all. And that's just like a big difference because the technology plays out differently, how you communicate to the customer. And so I think more than anything, we're keeping a really close eye on the customer. Where is he going? The pandemic changed a lot of consumer behaviors, how they shop, what they care about. And I think it's really that we're following more than what any one competitor is doing.
Did the pandemic change how people want to shave?
I mean, I think probably the thing you saw most is a lot of beards, just like you. Like a lot of beards, right? You don't need to. I mean, our team, it has a lot of beards too. I think that's probably part of it. But on the other hand, everyone has just spent 2 years looking at a reflection of themselves. And so there's certainly more awareness to grooming and what grooming on a good day or a bad day looks like. And then there's just probably bigger trends that we're seeing where, customers are more concerned about their impact on the world, their impact on their communities, how they're feeling about themselves, how their community's feeling about themselves. And so when we think about sort of like grooming products, at the end of the day, a lot of how much effort you put into it, what you're thinking about it, is related to the confidence and the self-worth and your self-manifestation. So these reflections on the world and what's happening and how people are feeling in their own heads, they're actually really tied together. And I think that's some of the biggest things that we have sort of focused on, is like really understanding where our customers' minds are at and what could be important to them going forward.
Have you needed to translate like the brand messaging to match that?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily to match the mindset from the pandemic. I think it is continuing to evolve the messaging as we hear more what is like relevant to the guys. Like a lot of what we found for our target customer, he is really interested in this journey. He sort of has like an intrinsic drive to continue to make progress in the world and like believes in that, right? And so for our brand, it's less about, looking good to sort of fulfill an outwardly appearance in the world. It's more intrinsically driven. And so we've been able to communicate with him by really reflecting back that we understand how he's feeling. And that's why we're here and to support him.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's like you're in the psyche of your customer, right? Like, and like you obviously a lot of people talk about like personas, but you really seem to know how like it's almost like when the decision is about how you feel about yourself. How does this guy tick? And like if you can help him feel better because has a more comfortable shave, or no 5 o'clock shadow, or whatever that thing is, like you link those things together, and that's ultimately what you're marketing and selling.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. I mean, it's cool because I don't think about this that much in terms of like the role that consumer products play in my life, but obviously they play a huge role, and it's like some of the things that we interact with the most. There's a reason why consumer packaged goods is so enormous of a category. So it's cool to think about that because I just don't think about it every day. Okay, let's talk about expansion. So there's a lot here. I mean, I think we should start with flamingo and then we can go to cat food. But I think like start with a logical one to me, and then let's go to like how do you expand to 4 brands and have, razors and cat food?
Yeah. So flamingo, it actually was many years in the making before we launched it, and it started right at home, right? A lot of women work at Harry's. They were using Harry's products, and they were talking about, oh, this really works, but this doesn't quite work as well. And so we were getting firsthand information, and we knew that there was a large part of the population we probably weren't serving as well with our products. And so it actually took years to really fine tune. Well, let's learn about her. Let's understand what she needs and kind of grow from there. And so that's really like Flamingo really was a homegrown initiative and idea because so many women on the team were like, okay, these are the things that are not working for us, and this is what we need, which I found really exciting. It was fun to create something that could generate so much buzz even internally for us. And we found that for our women, like the going back to sort of the psyche and the mindset with the consumer, like talk about night and day. For women, it was like a chore. It was like, oh shit, I gotta get rid of this. Or like, if I'm gonna be in a bathing suit, I gotta wax that. And like, how much time do I spend between waxing this thing versus that thing? And like, it became like a whole thing. And it was every part of the body, not just armpits and legs and bikini area. It was like, we heard stories about hair on their back, hair on their upper lip, one weird hair on their toe. Like, we got everything. And it was this chore. But for men, grooming, like shaving was like a sense of taking care of yourself. It was grooming. My dad taught me how. There's all this like ritual, time to myself. And so talk about really different mindsets. And really, if you're thinking about that customer, like, okay, well, let's understand what she's doing today. And, women don't just use razors. They use tweezers and wax strips and depilatories and like almost anything, threading, like, there's a million different things that they use for different parts of the body for different occasions. And so really understanding that mindset is what got us really excited about Flamingo and the opportunity there.
I love how different the customers are here. And because I feel like you're giving us a masterclass on understanding your customer and understanding and putting them into personas and acting differently and building different products and messaging differently and all that stuff. Because it's so easy to not think that way, especially if you have like lots of funding. I think it's like pretty easy to not think that way. It's just easy to be like, we need to make this new line of business go, versus like, we think there's an opportunity because all of us who are working here can use this product and we see gaps, and now let's go research it. And now let's go. I mean, it's like, this is how you build great products, right?
Yeah. And to be honest, it's a little bit of like that moment of like slow down to speed up, I think is really true here. So if you take this moment to really understand the customer and whatever that means for you, it doesn't always have to be like a 5,000 person, you can do it in different scrappy ways. But if you take that moment to really understand what is important, what the pain points are, how the customer is really thinking, all the questions that come later, like how do we design this? Should we prioritize that? How do we launch? How do we communicate? They're sort of like answered for you. But we found if we didn't take time to do that ever, it would just be much slower later, really building up into the launch of something.
Yeah. And I think it's such a common mistake to just be like, oh, I need these features or I need this new product. And you go build it without doing that. And then later you're like, well, how do I adapt this for the people who are using it? It's like, oh, actually, that's a big gap. How am I going to cross that gap? And it is that slowing down to speed up. I would say we didn't learn it early enough for us, where it's like we were basically early days. The support requests that were coming in were our core customer, and we just did what they asked for. And then we saw themes like, oh, we can fundamentally change the product and we'll serve the customer better. And then we started guessing at what people wanted at a point in time, and that didn't go well, as you can imagine. And then we got back to just huge amounts of research and really understanding the customer. And we have all these new things to work on now. And some of them from the outside don't look that different. And when you get into the details, they're night and day different because we understand the problems that our customers have and exactly what the pain is and why we can, save them time or let them do something they can do otherwise. But without the research, we would just be flying blind, right? It's interesting because that is such a big transition. Because the early days, you can't take that much time to do the research often, unless you're really well funded. And even then, how'd you get that well funded? So it's somewhere someone had to take a risk,
Yeah. I do think though you can call your 10 friends, and doing some of this focus groups. It's remarkable how much richness you can get from that. So I think always finding a little bit of time just to do some scrappy, talk to 10 people or something. And also if you're hanging out at a Target or something and you see somebody looking at a shelf, it's amazing what you can say. Hey, can I ask you a question about this? What you'll get. So I think there's always a little bit of a scrappy way.
Yeah, there's a scrappy way. I just think it's easy to not. It's especially if your stuff's growing. It's easy to think you know what's up. You get higher in your own supply, basically. I know what I'm doing. And then you go off in the wrong direction. Well, so who are the 10 people that you called to figure out that you should diversify into cat food?
So cat food came from an employee within Harry's. He fostered cats on his free time, huge love for cats, and sort of the nugget there that he really articulated. And then we're like, oh, that's really interesting. Let's deep dive it. Was that cat parents are second-class citizens. Everything's made for dogs, all the cute commercials, the food, the toys. And there was a real stigma around being a cat person or cat lady or, whatever it is. Right. And so dude, why are cat parents second-class citizens? There is no brand that's actually
this
just
is the Challenger
designed.
Brand. Yes.
Yeah. And so that was the nugget that sort of sent us running. I'm oh, let's see, is there a pain point? Is this Insight Rails? Was that one employee an N of one? And we found that it wasn't an N of one, and that cat needs and nutrition and, their finicky tastes and all that stuff, they were actually just totally different than dogs. Surprise, surprise. And so that's how the sort of idea kind of came to life and sort of set off from there.
What makes this similar? Is it that it's a Challenger brand and that Harry's is a Challenger brand? Is it how did it make sense for this to be within one company?
I think the biggest thing here is really identifying a pain point that exists. And is it a sharp enough pain point? Does it matter to enough people? And then lastly, being honest with ourselves, can we do something about it? Right? What are our capabilities to be able to reach that customer, talk to that customer, design for that customer? I think it's more the combination of that. I think the outcome is that you can be a challenger brand if you've sort of thought through and answered all those things. But the heart really is this a customer problem that's real that we as Harry's is well suited to serve or not? And will it benefit from being in our ecosystem? Which is why you're seeing stuff personal care, grooming, and cat food, which seems very different if you use a traditional sort of category mindset. But if you think about it from a pain point perspective, there's actually a lot of crossover, selling it on DTC, designing product that communicates well to people, all of that stuff. There's actually more similarities and differences there.
Do you think
except for the fact that you can't talk to the cat, and so that's been the newest learning.
You don't have any cat instruments?
You can't make cat. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you have at instruments? Now I feel like you probably do. It's the food out, and they come in, and how loud is their purring?
You do have to test it on cats, who apparently I learned don't like to eat the same. You can pour the same giant bag of dog food over and over again. They eat whatever is in front of them, but cats, they're nah, I'm not feeling tuna today. I maybe want salmon or something. Just has its own personality and taste. I don't have a cat, so I don't know. So this is all learnings I've had from the brand, but
I have a lot of respect for cats, but they really scare me. Just putting that out there. They are so
You're
they
afraid of
are
cats?
a little bit, yeah. They're unpredictable, and I feel like they are so much more human. Like, there's something about them that I'm just like, you know too much, cats. But I digress.
So you have Harry's, which is for men. You have Flamingo, or people who identify as men. You have Flamingo for people who identify as women, or any other way, I guess. And then you have Cat Person. And like, obviously you see the similarities. From a business perspective, was this like a challenge to sell people on that like, hey, we should expand in this way that seems so different? Or how did that work at this scale?
It wasn't really. I mean, internally, it definitely wasn't. People easily understood, oh, like that makes sense. When I explain that cat parents feel like second-class citizens, it resonates really quickly. Like the elevator pitch is sort of easy from that perspective. And then when you sort of size the market, how big is it, how many cat parents are there in the US, et cetera, and the fact that you launch on DTC, you can quickly see, okay, well, where could our capabilities really help here? So internally, I'd say there wasn't, and there's actually a lot of excitement to really go do something that's a little bit different and learn from a new space. I don't think externally there really was as well in terms of like with our investors. I think they really believe that if we could disrupt in one category with big competitors, we could do it again in another category, as long as we were really focused on keeping the same sort of business values around the customer and really focusing on how to grow that in a mindful way. But no, I think for the most part, there was a lot of excitement across the board.
Yeah, that's amazing, because I guess if it does come back down to like values and mission.
Yeah,
it's easy to underestimate that, actually, in terms of from the outside. It's like, because you're saying this is so obvious to me from the outside, didn't seem obvious before, but as you start to go towards, oh, this is a challenger brand. There's a category here which has like established brands that are not changing and they don't know the customer very well. And like, we know the customer really well. We can know a customer well, and we can get there. And also, it seems like this wouldn't be possible except for the fact that it's direct to consumer, right? If this was pre-internet, this seems like a much harder pivot. But for you all, it seems like you probably just made a new website and suddenly people are buying it.
Yeah. And the mission, to your point, really does hold it. Like our sort of like internal mission is create things people like more. It's very simple. I think the words are very intentional, things being things as in the product sense, but also things like a new process. It could be an internal process or a new performance review process, for example. So things in its broadest sense. People, sort of like a real expression of all humans. And then like more is really that, that thing needs a reason to exist, right? It has to be better than something already there. It can't just be a copycat. And it also has a little bit of a sense of continuous improvement, right? Like more. And so you're able to continually improve your products, launch new things, like evolve with the customer, with the category, for example. So I think in that statement really helps to shape how we think about problems or opportunities, big and small, whether that is a new brand or a new product launch or something, or a new service on our platform. Like they all have a little bit of that mindset, which sort of fosters a common way to think about decisions that we have to make together.
Love that. You've been at Harry's for about a decade. I think that's right? Just cool decade. As a chief commercial officer, what's your favorite part of the job?
I would say there's like two like branches of stuff that I really, really enjoy. Like one bucket of stuff is I love the nitty gritty when it comes to product, whether it's like sitting with a group of designers and really looking at like, what's the new handle form and shape and, what inspired this and things like that. Or, fragrance sessions where you're smelling, you're telling stories to come to life. That's like one of the most fun activities for me, at least, really kind of bringing that to life, or like reviewing performance on product, like results. And so that whole bucket of stuff, like the actual making, going to the factory, manifesting an idea from somebody's head to a physical thing in my hand that performs well, that we can get great customer feedback on, like that is by far like probably one of my favorite things to really do. And then the second part for me is really watching people grow. My first hire at Harry's, I guess 8.5 years ago, whatever it is now, he leads our full technology and manufacturing. When he started, from where he is now, like it's been so fun to support him on this journey, watch him grow, and actually also learn a lot about how I should be as his manager, how I can grow, and sort of like that development and that partnership along the way. And we've accomplished a lot of really great and fun things together. Like that's tremendous to me. Like I think I am most energized about, going to work or logging into Zoom, I guess these days, because of the people that I'm sharing it with. I feel like oftentimes like in interviews, people are like, oh, why are you at Harry's so long? When we're interviewing new candidates. And for me, I still feel like, you're in college and you have like a group project and you're like, oh, I'm going to work with that person, my friend over there and that, right? And then you're like, okay, it's late night. You guys are like, trying to grind something out, but you can just sort of depend on, I still feel like I've picked my project team and we're going to like deliver the thing for the win, for the A or whatever it is. And that if we all like kind of mess up a little, it's okay. Like we all understand where we're coming from. It's human, it's normal. And so that human aspect of it is really important to me. Like, even with 600 people, it still feels like I picked my project team.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think it's a really beautiful way to end, because I think what you've done is really rare and it's amazing. And I think like going back to the, like, it actually matters how it's done and it matters who you're doing it with is like this secret, right? Like that's the great secret of all of this. Like if it's actually fun and engaging and and your team is constantly evolving and constantly getting, hopefully better and better for the problems you're trying to solve, that is how you create great stuff. I just love that as like a takeaway for anyone listening, is like search for what B has, right? Like find people who bring you joy in the work, and try to put yourself in a position to take that risk. Cause you never know, like you might be building a Harry's and you might be making cat food. And that's all our dream. We all want to be able to make a pivot like that. B, thank you so much for being here with us. This was really great. How can people connect or find you if they want to learn more?
So believe it or not, LinkedIn is actually the best way to find me. I know I sound very old school when I say that, but on all the social platforms, I don't tend to respond, if I'm honest.
Okay. LinkedIn it is. Okay. Well, thanks for being here and have a great day.
Thank you.
I mean, you're telling me a razor company is making cat foods? It's some wild stuff. You don't see product extensions like this every day.
You don't, but B really kind of mapped out this unique kind of insight between razor customers and cat people. Cat people.
Yes, cat people. Say it again.
Cat people.
Yes. No, I didn't really realize, like you'd said before, like the cat food thing. I was like, all right, this must be incorrect. Like Sylvie's research is wrong.
The research is bad.
But I thought it was interesting, just like the idea of like, these are people who are usually forgotten about effectively. Like we all have dog people in our lives. We sure do. The idea that there's just like, there are cat people and they've been overlooked and they just need someone to pay attention to what their needs are. And like, oh, you're going to make even better food, and cats care about like what's in their food more than dogs. Like a dog will eat the same thing every day, but a cat won't.
Because cats are, I said this in the interview and I feel like neither of you could get on board, but I was saying cats are crazy. They are very people-like.
Yes. More divergent in terms of like, you can see a cat's personality. Like this cat sits by the window. This one lives in the attic. This one lives on a witch's broom.
They have preferences. But
But it was more about like, you know, if you're building a brand, if the brand is what matters and you're connecting with the cat owner, the cat parent, and they're overlooked and no one's really paying attention to them, no one's listening to them. And then here's a brand that's doing that. It makes sense that would connect. I just wouldn't expect it normally to be razors and cat food, but you know,
Completely.
I guess we should all feel empowered by this.
Yeah, I feel empowered, but something else in the interview, I just thought it was great how, as a chief commercial officer, B loves getting in there with like the product. She was talking about shaving faces.
Yeah,
like
love that.
Very hands-on, and in a way that obviously makes such a difference in the brand, in the product. Like,
well, so much of this stuff is so simple, right? Like, it's just understand your customer's experience, like understand what their problems are. But it's sometimes hard. It's hard to actually get in there and do the work, right? Like, if you're making razors, you want, and you don't shave your face, you want to go like be shaving other people's faces like 6 times a day until you get really good. Like, seems like a funny thing. It's like in someone else's personal space, like all this stuff. But obviously you do the work and you figure it out. And then, yes, you can see the difference between the products you're building and you build better products.
The idea is simple. The work is hard. The work is hard.
That's why when you're doing the work, you should listen to us. We'll be your pals on the journey. We're here.
We're here.
Ready to make you laugh, ready to help you learn. That's what it's all about. So if you are laughing, if you are learning, please rate and review us wherever you listen to the podcast. Shoot us out a tweet. Get a tweet out there.
Ooh, I like
on
it.
the Twitterverse.
I like it.
Yeah. And if you have feedback, if you have ideas for us, you can send it to ttlpod@wistia.com. That's it for us. Have a great day, everyone. And I will talk to you soon, Sylvie.
Yes, sir.